Hi guys and welcome to Fandom Newbie. Firstly, wish you a very happy new year. 2020 is finally over. This horrible year that we've had is finally over, and I really hope that 2021 brings you all a lot of happiness, a lot of success, and a lot of love. So happy new year. Let's hope that 2021 is just amazing for all of us. Today's video is basically 21 books that I want to read in 2021. These books are like a collection of new releases which are coming out in 2021, as well as some books which I wanted to read in 2020 but I couldn't get to. And then some of these are just like really old books that have been on my TBR for the longest time, but I have never read them. So it's kind of like a hodgepodge of all the books that I really want to read, but I think I have some really good ones in this list. So definitely stick around till the end to know all the amazing books that I plan to read this year. And of course, without further ado, let's just get started. Number one is The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. Now, this book was at the top of my TBR in 2020, but for some reason, I just didn't get around to reading it then. I don't know why, which is why I feel like this will probably be one of the first books that I pick up in January. This book is basically the story of an ex-Hollywood actress who was a huge star, like Marilyn Monroe level star in the 1920s. The thing that I've heard about this book is that the author has done an amazing job of really capturing the spirit of the 1920s. Like, she really captures the things that happened in that era, like how it was to be a Hollywood actress in that era, really well. And I can believe that, because in Daisy Jones and the Six, she did an amazing job of capturing the essence of the 1970s rock and roll band scene. So I feel like she'll do an amazing job of that in this as well. And I've always been very intrigued by like old Hollywood era, also Bollywood, like old Hollywood and Bollywood era has always intrigued me, which is why I really want to read this book, and I hope that I can finally do it in January and that nothing else gets in the way of doing that. Number two is The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab. This was also one of my most anticipated books of 2020, but again, I didn't get around to reading it. This book is just supposed to be really amazing. I've heard amazing things about it. What I've heard about this book is that it's basically about the story of a girl who has a condition, or she has something where people can't remember her until she meets this one boy who remembers her from the past, which is supposed to be impossible because of the condition or whatever she has. And then I think it leads to kind of like a love story between them. I'm not really sure. But what I do know is that I love Victoria Schwab's writing. She's one of my all-time favorite authors, and I feel like because of that, I'm gonna love this book as well. So yeah, I'm very excited to read this one. Number three is King of Scars by Leigh Bardugo. Now, this book is again a part of the Grishaverse, which is like Leigh Bardugo's most famous fantasy world that she has created, which is the same world in which the Grisha trilogy, the Shadow and Bone trilogy, as well as my absolute favorite book, Six of Crows duology, is set in. Now, in terms of like the timeline, I don't really know where King of Scars fits. I don't know if it's between Shadow and Bone and Six of Crows, or whether it's after Six of Crows. I'm not really sure. But the reason why I want to read this book is because I really want to dive back into the Grishaverse again, because I loved the world building aspect of Six of Crows as well. So I want to dive back into that world. I want to read more about, you know, the different realms in that world and get to know more characters, which is why I really want to read King of Scars this year. Number four is The Midnight Library by Matt Haig. Now, this book received so much praise in 2020. Like, I heard so many people say such amazing things about it, but I just never got around to reading it. Basically, the premise of this book is that there is a library that exists somewhere like at the edge of the world or edge of the universe or something like that. And in there, each person has like multiple books. So there's one book which kind of documents the life that you have actually led, and then there are other books about the life that you could have led if you had made certain other choices in your life. So it's basically like different versions of your life that are documented in this library. Now, that's pretty much all I know about this book, because that's also what's written in the blurb for this book. but this premise itself is just so interesting. And honestly, I love any book that has to do with books. Like, I like any book which has secret libraries or like magical libraries or, you know, magical books and things like that. And that is why I feel like this is going to be a book that I just absolutely love and enjoy. So yeah, I'm very excited to read this one as well. Number 5 is The Henna Artist by Alka Joshi. Now, this book is about the life of a young girl named Lakshmi, and it is set in the 1950s era of Rajasthan, specifically in Jaipur. Now, Lakshmi basically is in an abusive marriage, and she happens to run away and escape that abusive marriage, and then she becomes a henna artist for, I think it's like a wealthy princess, I want to say, or just like a really wealthy person. She becomes a henna artist for that person, and it basically talks about like Lakshmi's struggle to a financially independent life. And while Lakshmi is being financially independent and while she, you know, she's getting her life together, her estranged husband comes back into her life, and this time she finds that her estranged husband is with a sister who Lakshmi never knew that she had. And what I've heard about this book is that it's like really like a very well crafted and beautifully woven story of like these really weird messed up family dynamics, and it really captures like the essence of 1950s Rajasthani era really well. And it's a story of like one woman's struggle to find independence, to find love, to find, you know, like a secure and happy life. And I feel like those stories, whenever they're told, are just very, very intriguing and very interesting to read. That is why I'm excited to read this one as well. The next book is The Poppy War by R.F. Kuang. Now, this is a fantasy book series. There are, I think, 3 books in this series, and the last one actually released last year in 2020. But what I've heard about this book is that it is just such an honest and horrific depiction of war. Now, while this book is actually a fantasy book, what I've heard about this book is that it has a lot of historical references, especially of the opium wars that happened in China, that are actually really like woven into the story really well. And it just is a very, very honest, very like harrowing, gut-wrenching depiction of war. There's a lot of like really mature themes in this book. So there's racism, genocide, like I think sexual violence, just a lot of violence in this book. But what I've heard is that it is just very, very well written, and the characters in this book are also like just really, really endearing and really interesting to read about. It's supposed to be a very, very like really emotional reading experience. So that is why I'm very, very intrigued and very excited to read The Poppy War. The next book is Club You to Death by Anuja Chauhan. Now, I just read this in a newspaper clipping actually, that Anuja Chauhan is releasing a new book next year. I think it's somewhere around summertime, if I'm not mistaken. Like, all I know from that newspaper write-up that I read, it's actually a crime novel that is set in Delhi. And basically it's like there's a cold-blooded killer who's going around, I think, murdering people in Delhi, and this crime has to be solved. That's all I know about it. But what I do know is that I really like Anuja Chauhan's writing style, and I really like the way she crafts stories. So I'm very interested to see how she's going to write an actual thriller kind of crime novel, because what I've read is like only her kind of chick flick kind of books. So I'm excited to see how she brings her writing style to this new genre, and yeah, I'm also excited to read this one. Keeping with the theme of new Indian releases that are coming up next year, the next one is The Last Queen by Chitra Banerjee. Now, again, not a lot has been released about this book to the press, I believe, but what I do know is that it is a story of Jindan Kaur, who was a queen, and she basically was an extremely passionate and stubborn queen who fought against the British to protect Punjab. Now, I don't know a lot about this part of history, but I do know again that I love Chitra Banerjee's writing. I absolutely loved The Palace of Illusions, and I really want to read The Forest of Enchantments as well. But I know that I love her writing, so I feel like I will love this book as well. The next book is The Fifth Season by N.K. Jemisin. Now, I've been wanting to read an N.K. Jemisin book for a really long time because, again, I've heard such amazing things about this author. But what I know about this book is that it's basically a mixture of post-apocalyptic fiction with fantasy. And both these genres are genres that I absolutely love. Like, I'm such a huge fantasy nerd, but I love post-apocalyptic and dystopian fiction as well. And what I've heard about this book is that there are some themes of war in this book, but the war is not for any like territory or land or anything. It's just basically for like the basic resources that people need to survive in this post-apocalyptic world or something like that. And yeah, like, I don't really know again that much about this book. The blurb doesn't give away too much either, but I've heard amazing things about this author and I really want to read one of her books, so I'm gonna start with this one. The next two books on my list are actually non-fiction books, and they are kind of like self-help books. So the first one is Don't Overthink It, and the second one is Buy Yourself the Effing Lilies. Now, both these books kind of talk about self-love. So Don't Overthink It, as the title suggests, it's basically filled with like tips and tricks on how to not overthink everything in your life, and like how to kind of take more control of your life, I believe. And Buy Yourself the Effing Lilies is actually a memoir by Tara Schuster, I think that's how you pronounce her name. But it's basically her memoir and her like struggles through the TV industry, and through this she talks a lot about self-love and how to actually not let other people's opinions bog you down, and how you should take care of yourself. I think both these books sound very interesting, and they are like topics that I want to delve into more in 2021, especially self-love and especially not overthinking things. They're just things that I really want to read about and get more knowledge about. So yeah, I'm excited to read these as well. The next one is A Promised Land by Barack Obama. Now, this was also like a book that I really wanted to read. So many booktubers made reviews about this book, and it just sounds very, very interesting. I've read Michelle Obama's autobiography, and I absolutely loved it. I listened to it on audiobook. So I'm thinking that I'm going to get the audiobook for this one as well, because it is narrated by Barack Obama himself, and I feel like just listening to his own story in his own like words will just be a lot more powerful, I feel, than me reading it. So yeah, I'm definitely going to get the audiobook for this one and start listening to it, because I just feel that he is an amazing personality and he is so inspiring, and I'm sure his book will be the same. The next book is The White Tiger by Arvind Adiga. Now, I recently saw on Priyanka Chopra's Instagram that this book is being made into a movie, and that movie is being released in 2021. For every book to movie adaptation that is released, I generally like to read the book before watching the movie, and the trailer seemed quite interesting, so I want to watch The White Tiger. I want to watch the movie for sure, but before doing that, I have to read the book. That's just like something that I really like to do. I always like to read the book before I watch the movie. What The White Tiger is about is, again, I think it's kind of like a rags to riches tale. It's basically the story of, I think his name is Balram, if I'm not mistaken, and it talks about his like journey to success and the things that he has to do to become successful, which I feel are not fully moral and which are not fully legal, because one of the things that I've heard about this book is that, again, all the characters in this book are very morally gray, and it's a very like gray area in which this book it's a very gray area in which this book is like, in which the story is kind of told. So yeah, I don't think it's going to be a very like straightforward rags to riches kind of tale. I think it's going to be filled with a lot of strange and not very legal things. So I'm very excited to read this book, because I also want to watch the movie and enjoy that as well. The next book is Clara and the Sun by Kazuo Ishiguro. Yeah, I think that's how you pronounce his name. Now, to be honest, again, I don't really know much about this book, but when I was googling most anticipated book releases of 2021, this book came up in almost all the lists. Like, every single list mentioned this book. So for some reason, I feel like it's going to be a good one, or it's definitely going to be one of those bestsellers that everyone talks about in 2021. This author has won the Booker Prize for another book which I haven't read, but this book is supposed to be like, the only thing I know about this book is that it's supposed to talk about the reason why we fall in love, or like it has to do with themes around love. But yeah, I'm intrigued, I'm excited to read, and I want to read a bit more of Japanese fiction because I feel like it's a very different kind of, they write very different kind of books. So yeah, I'm excited to read this one as well. The next book is The Baby Is Mine by Oyinkan Braithwaite. Now, this book is another kind of thriller by Oyinkan Braithwaite. I really, really loved her My Sister the Serial Killer, which I read last year. I thought that was a brilliant book. So I'm also excited to read this one because her thrillers are not exactly thrillers. Like, there is a thriller aspect to it, but she also covers a lot of like family dynamics, politics, things like that, like other storylines within the thriller aspect, and I feel like this book will also have that kind of feel. So yeah, I'm excited to read this one. What I've heard about this book is that it's basically the story of like there's a baby and there are two women who claim to be the baby's mother, and the main character has to kind of figure out who is lying and who is telling the truth. So yeah, I feel like it's going to be very interesting again, so waiting to read this one. The next one is The Rudest Book Ever by Shwetab Gangwar. Shwetab Gangwar, I think that's how you pronounce his name. This book was again recommended to me by Avni and Ronak in the collaboration that I did with them, but it just seems very, very interesting. So this is kind of like a self-help book in that sense, which talks about a lot of issues that we as Indians or like the Indian youth faces, and it gives Shwetab's like perspective on how you can solve those issues, whether it's relationships, like issues with parents, career, anything like that. It gives his views of how you can solve these things very practically, and it's supposed to be written in a way where like it's just like in your face and like straight to the point and very blunt, which is why it's called the rudest book ever. But what I've heard is that it's very relatable for us Indians, so I'm excited to read this one. The next one is Hunted by the Sky by Tanaz Bhatena. Now, this book is a fantasy fiction book which is set in medieval India. Basically, there is this main character who I think her name is Gul. Yeah. So there's a main character whose name is Gul, whose family has been destroyed by an evil ruler. And because of this, she basically joins a gang of rebel women who have magical powers, who help Gul also kind of hone her magic, and now she's taking revenge against this evil ruler who has killed her family. This book sounds a lot like An Ember in the Ashes, which is a book that I absolutely love, and a series which I absolutely love. And the fact that it's set in medieval India is just even more intriguing, so I'm really, really waiting to read this one. The next one is Spinning Silver by Naomi Novik. Now, this book is supposed to be a reimagining or a retelling of Rumpelstiltskin, and it is another fantasy novel. What I've heard about this book is that it is extremely atmospheric, and it's just very, very like mystical and very well written. I absolutely love atmospheric books. I really like The Night Circus as well as The Starless Sea, which are both extremely atmospheric, and they're very magical and fantastical, and this book is supposed to have the same feel. Like I've heard that if you like those kind of books, then you will like Spinning Silver, and I really enjoy those kind of books. So yeah, looking forward to reading this one. The next book is The Guest List by Lucy Foley. Now, this book is a classic whodunit kind of mystery thriller. So basically the premise is that a bunch of people are invited to like a private island for a wedding. And then at this wedding, something sinister happens. I think one of them is killed. And the suspects are basically the people who are on that island, and they have to figure out who the killer is. So it sounds very much like an Agatha Christie kind of novel, especially And Then There Were None, where basically like a crime happens on an island and the suspects are only those 10 people who are on that island. So it really sounds like one of those very classic whodunit style like crime novels, and this book actually won the top like mystery or thriller book of 2020 on Goodreads, so that's why I'm looking forward to reading this one. Now, the next book is The Secret History by Donna Tartt. Now, this book is actually quite an old book. It was released in 2011 or even before that, maybe, I'm not sure. But it's a book that's been spoken about by one of my favorite booktubers, The Clockwork Reader, Hannah. So she's spoken a lot about this book, and basically how she describes this book is that it is kind of like How to Get Away with Murder, that TV show, where it's like these really intelligent students from a very prestigious college kind of get together, and one of the students has been murdered or something like that, and like that whole mystery of like why and how this person was murdered is kind of unraveled as we go along in the story. And it's just supposed to be very well written, the characters are supposed to be really good, and it's just supposed to be very, very intriguing and very mysterious. So that's why it is on this list, because it was recommended by one of my all-time favorite booktubers and I trust her recommendation. So yeah, I'm also very excited to read this one. And the last book on my list is The Nature of Middle-earth by J.R.R. Tolkien. Now, I'm a huge Lord of the Rings fan. I love The Lord of the Rings and I loved The Hobbit and I love J.R.R. Tolkien's writing. And this is basically a collection of unpublished essays by Tolkien himself, and it's going to be compiled together and published in 2021, and it basically talks about, you know, the different aspects and different histories of Middle Earth. I just want to jump back straight into this world because I love Middle Earth. I love the world of Lord of the Rings. I think it's such an amazing, rich, such a good fantasy world, and it's so well crafted. And I feel like all the other fantasy books that have come after this have been inspired by Tolkien's world. So I just want to dive back into this world, get to know a bit more about it. And again, like I said, I love Tolkien's writing, so that is why this is on my list. So yeah, that was my video for today. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, give it a thumbs up. Leave a comment down below letting me know what are some of your most anticipated reads of 2021, because I would really like to know and also get more recommendations from you guys. And of course, do subscribe to my channel for more book related videos. I'll see you guys next time. Bye.